Hi everybody, thank you for joining us for this webinar entitled Metrics, the Key to Optimal ITSM Performance. Joining us today is Malcolm Fry and Patrick Bolger. Just a little bit more information about our speakers. Malcolm is a recognised IT industry luminary with over 40 years of experience, and he has had numerous articles and papers published. He's the author of many best-selling books on IT service management, including the ITIL Light book released in 2010. Malcolm was also a member of the ITIL Advisory Group, responsible for overseeing the development and publishing of ITIL version 3, and he was a mentor for the Service Transition book. In 2009, Malcolm was awarded the coveted Ron Munn's Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in the IT service management arena. Patrick joined Hornbill in 1998 and in 2010 was appointed Chief Evangelist. He's dedicated to the communication of industry best practices, working closely with customers, industry associations and IT luminaries to identify trends and educate organisations on the opportunity associated with service excellence. An industry veteran, Patrick has significant first-hand experience of the issues facing IT and is an influential and recognised authority in the IT service management arena. He's also an active contributor to a number of strategic groups and partnerships which influence the service management industry. He's a member of the popular ITSM Rest of World podcast team and helps drive the Back to ITSM community initiative. And with that, I will hand over to Patrick.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And it's nice to be called an industry veteran, which just means I'm old, but for once, I've got someone joining me that's marginally older than me. Hi, Malcolm, how are you?
Only physically older, Pat. Only physically older.
Okay, you can't get away with it. It's not often I get the opportunity to gloat, so it's nice to do it occasionally. So yeah, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you guys about metrics and about the importance of those metrics for optimal ITSM performance. What we're going to do is look at kind of metrics in general and the key to precision, and look at improving ITSM performance, looking at how you choose the right metrics, encouraging the right behavior from staff, presented in the right manner. These are all critical things that we need to do. We'll look at some practical guidance, where you can start, some of the guidance around the latest edition of ITIL, and how you start to look at the metrics that are right for you. And then we'll get Malcolm to go through his good day, bad day concepts. I'll look at some of the common issues of metrics, and then we'll look at some of the technology. We're using Supportworks ITSM and Exec View scorecards, but that can be your own technology, and hopefully we'll have some time then at the end for a bit of a question-answer session. So with that, I suppose we can get right into it. So let me just make sure the technology is working and my slides advance. There we go. Malcolm, maths and the ancients. What have you got to tell us about that?
Well, Pat, you've already told everybody I'm ancient, so I was probably around for most of this stuff. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to get a chance to talk to you, and for some of you it's slightly earlier, it's 6 p.m. here where I'm speaking from, so I guess we're all on different time zones, so it's really good of you to join us. Before we look at this wonderful slide and discuss all these lovely pictures and so on and so forth, I just want to ask Pat a couple of questions. Pat, if someone says to you that someone's just had a baby, what would be one of the first questions you would ask?
Well, boy or a girl, and what weight, I suppose.
What it would weigh? That would be a key question, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what about if I said to you that it weighed 2 pounds?
Ooh, I'd be a bit concerned for the baby. That's very light.
So you would base an assumption on that value. What about if I said it was 7 pounds?
It sounds like a pretty healthy weight. I'd assume that everything was okay.
What about if I said it was 15 pounds?
Ooh, I'd be a bit concerned for the mum.
Sounds painful even to a guy.
Indeed.
So basically, so when the baby is born, you have two questions from the very beginning. We start off with metrics, the very first thing. I mean, before you get told, the first thing happens is the delivery person weighs and measures the baby. And then that's how we know it was 7 pounds. And based on 2, 7 or 15 pounds, you're going to make some assumption as to how well the baby is or how well the mother is. Is that reasonable, Pat?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption to make.
So we come in the world with a metric or a set of metrics. What about if you're told somebody dies? What's one of the first questions you ask there?
Usually what age?
Yeah, what age? And if I said 90, what would your reaction be?
Yeah. Oh, I think that was a pretty good innings, as they say.
It doesn't sound too bad, does it? What about if I said 60?
That's a bit too young.
What about if I said 20?
I'd be thinking tragedy, way too young.
Exactly. So based on the statistics we've just seen, it's a tragedy to have a good innings. And of course, that good innings, the person that's 90 years old could have spent 70 of those in prison for all we know. But nonetheless, we make assumptions based on those instant numbers right in front of us. And, you know, one of the last things that happens to you, Pat, is you get measured for your coffin and get measured and weighed for your coffin. Exactly the same. The baby got measured and weighed coming in, you get measured and weighed going out. Metrics you can't change, but metrics that are emotive enough that when we say them, we react, as you quite rightly did. Oh, that doesn't sound good, or that sounds okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what metrics are all about. It's about getting an impression and saying, now I've seen that, I need to take action, I don't need to take action, we need to do some planning, we don't need to do some planning, and so on. And as background to this and all the work I've been doing lately on metrics, I decided to research the ancients, Aztecs, Egyptians, Sumerians, and Stonehenge, and China, and UK, and Chicoans. And it's quite interesting. The Aztecs and the Mayans, and you can see Chichen Itza down the bottom left-hand corner there, amazingly famous icon of Mexico. And if you look at the precision to which that's built, bear in mind it's also a calendar, it's also an altar, if you like, and so on and so forth. The precision is phenomenal. That had to be done with mathematics. There's no way you could have done it any other way. The Egyptians building the pyramids. There's an argument going on, has been going on for the last few years, not too many years, only about 10 or 15, saying that at Giza, the pyramids you can see here, there's actually 5 of them, and they're actually almost exactly the same place as the stars in Orion's belt, almost exactly the same, which is incredible. If that's true, then it's an incredible feat, not just of mathematics, but also of imagination to be able to interpret how that would look on the ground. But even if that's not true, it's still obviously a hugely wonderful piece of maths that made all this happen. And in fact, Abu Simbel, which is in the south of Egypt, they built a dam there, which is now called Lake Nasser, and Abu Simbel was going to go under the dam. So a lot of countries got together and helped to move it. When they moved it and put it in place, what happened was once a year, on a certain day at a certain time, the sun hits the pharaoh and brings him temporarily to life, if you like. Hits him on the eyes, brings him temporarily to life. Not anymore, because with all our technology and all our research, we couldn't get it in exactly the right place. Whereas years ago, with whatever mathematics they were using, they managed to do it. The Sumerians, probably the founders of maths the way we understand them today, which probably means that half the school children in the world hate the Sumerians. However, nonetheless, if you look, you can see the alphabet and the numbers on the right-hand side that the Sumerians used. The interesting thing about the Sumerians is how many degrees there are in a circle. And it's quite interesting. Why are there 360 degrees in a circle? Have you any idea, Pat?
No idea, Malcolm.
No idea. Well, let me tell you the theory. I don't know how true it is because it's so ancient, it's hard to prove. But basically, if you took a marker every day with the sun coming up, you wouldn't get 360 degrees in the circle. You get 365.25 or something like that. Yeah. The Sumerians said this is too difficult to calculate. We can't work on 365. So they lopped off the 5 degrees, or 5 and a bit degrees, and said they're now 360 degrees in a circle. And that's what they started to work from. You know, I don't understand why it's not metric. Every other measurement we have is metric. So we can thank the Sumerians for that. Stonehenge, just look at the picture at the bottom there. Obviously built to precision. Obviously built with mathematics. China, the top thing that you can see at the right-hand side, the gold circle, is in fact effectively a globe flattened out. It's a map to find your way around. This is thousands of years before the world even knew about the fact that the world was a globe rather than as a flat surface. You know, not that long ago in Europe, we were still thinking you'd fall off the end. Although, you know, I'm not sure I haven't once or twice. If we move along to the next one, then we can see UK. But that's just there because longitude and latitude, not an ancient invention this time. But everybody who goes sailing, everybody who goes flying, anybody who goes camping, walking, whatever, is going to be using that simple metric of longitude and latitude to find their way around, to precision where you are in the whole world, just by 2 measurements. And lastly, I put the one at the bottom here, the Chicoans, because to be quite honest, Chaco Valley, where this is the most amazing place. And you can see the precision in front of us there, the circles, how those little windows are in exactly the right place all the way around. And this is in New Mexico in the USA. So if we look at all of these, what we can see is not only maths, but a reason for the maths. These people just didn't add up, didn't take away. They had a reason. And, you know, everyday life, mathematics are essential to us. We ask these questions all the time. How big, how far, how high, how heavy, what's the time, what's the cost? No doubt most of you, when you decide to come here, will say, what time is it happening? How long is it going to last? What are they going to be talking about? And it's all over the place all the time. You're going to go and visit someone. Where are you? How do I find you? And so on and so forth. Sometimes measurements need to be precise. Sometimes they can be vague. For example, if you have plenty of time to spare and you're on a journey, you might say, how long? Well, soon. You know, no big worry. We'll be there soon. But if you're under pressure on that journey and you're worried about getting to a meeting or something, then you'll start being precise. 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes. It will be 10 minutes. As opposed to, cool, soon, you know, whenever. Have you noticed soon is even a long word to say? You can't say soon quick. It doesn't work. Sometimes measurements are vague, and sometimes they're very detailed. Sometimes we need to know, have we done a good job? Yes or no? And then if we've done a bad job, we'll probably say, I need to see more about this. And, you know, I live about 40 miles from London. And as you all know, going on at the moment is the beginning of the build-up to the Olympic Games. And the Olympic Games, you know, is an absolute plethora of information. You know, people will be setting personal bests. They will be setting world records, personal records, country records, Olympic records. The one thing we know is there's going to be a huge amount of measuring going on at the Olympics and a huge amount of interpretation. Someone loses a race they was expected to win. That race will be run again and again and again, and someone will say, look, he didn't do this, she didn't do that, etc., etc. It's huge. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. As mainly Americans, I want to ask you a question. Do any of you know someone that you think likes the baseball statistics more than the actual game? Obsessed with the numbers? Put your hands up if you know someone like that. Yeah, quite a few of you. I thought so. I can see down this telephone. Put your hands up if it's you. Yeah, I thought it would be. You know, it's obsessive. The stats are all over the screen all the time. And just to give you a quick indication, look at that top left-hand diagram where we're trying to pick out who won the 100-meter race there. It's incredible how close that is. It's absolute precision. It's not saying, well, he looked like he won, we'll give him the medal. It has to be precise. It's to a hundredth or a thousandth of a second. It's quite incredible. The importance of precise measurement is so that we can make sure we know where we're going. You cannot win an Olympic title without at least knowing, at least in the athletics, what the world record is before you go. Because if you're going to win the gold medal, you're going to have to break the world record. And if we look at stats, I mean, we've got lots and lots and lots of numbers there. But in fact, if we look at the numbers of the key performance indicators and critical success factors that are in ITIL V3, they're quite astounding. When I first put this slide together, I just put service transition and service operation ones at the top. Then I thought, oh, heck, I'll put the rest of them in as well. But I'm not going to change the title because I'm only really worried about the top. So these are the ones in the new ITIL V3 edition, or now it's just called ITIL, but the latest edition, the 2011. You'll see at the end of each chapter of, not each chapter, I apologize, at the end of each process when it's being described in the book, it'll have critical success factors and key performance indicators, nice and neat and tidy at the end. But look at the numbers, 28 critical success factors, 90 key performance indicators for transition, 20 CSFs, and 64 KPIs for operation. If we look at the grand total at the bottom, 116 critical success factors and 348 KPIs. That's some measuring. I can't possibly look at all those figures. I'm going to need some way to whittle that down, and we'll talk about whittling it down later on. So, Pat, what's this about the why question?
It's just about choosing the right metrics, Malcolm. And people often ask, well, yeah, what am I going to measure? What metrics should I use? But I think the why question is something that people don't ask often enough. Is why am I measuring it? What's the purpose of this particular metric? So for me, to get to the right metrics, there's a few things you absolutely have to consider. So the first thing is, who's going to get the information? So is it going to, you know, a service process manager? Is it going to a service desk manager, a service delivery manager, a business unit manager? Depending on who's going to receive the information, that really determines what information we need to present, the level of detail, etc. But the important question there is, what are they going to do with it? The whole point of driving metrics is that we're using them to gauge our level of performance, and we need to use those metrics to actually make certain assumptions, discussions, decisions. They all come from the metrics that we've got. So for IT, for the purpose of actually doing this, we have to ask the question, can we collect the information? So if someone needs something, can we collect that data? How easy, how difficult is it to collect it? Then you've got to examine what it tells you, but also importantly, what it doesn't tell you. So a lot of the time you have to compare these metrics or triangulate them to actually get a fair assessment of what the metric is actually telling you and what it's not telling you. So we'll cover that in a moment. To get these answers, really, to get the right metrics, you have to engage with the stakeholders and basically ensure that the information you're providing gives just enough detail. If I'm a business unit manager, I don't really want reams and reams of information about how IT is performing. I want a simple indicator that shows me if things are going in the right direction, or if they're not, it gives me enough detail to actually drill down into that. And basically have some discussions with some people, make some decisions as to how things will improve and take some actions for that improvement. So that, to me, is the critical part. I think people just don't ask enough. So the other aspect is actually, will it encourage the right behavior? So the slogan at the top basically says when employees are presented with a KPI, they'll do everything they can to achieve it, even if it means destroying the business. And it's illustrated here quite adequately by Dilbert calling the service desk and the guy on the service desk saying, hello, may I close your call? Dilbert obviously said, no, you haven't helped me, but he's saying, look, I'm not evaluated on how helpful I am. I'm evaluated on how many tickets I close. So this is an important facet. It's an important facet to remember. If you give staff a metric, if you give them a KPI to meet, then you have to consider what it means to actually meet that KPI. Good example is your first call resolution. People really look at first contact resolution on the assumption that if we solve stuff at first contact, then customers are happier. And that's good. If we're achieving our 80% FCR here, I think most service desk managers would be happy with that. But then if we look at the balance of that metric and find that actually 40% of those calls that we close the first contact are being reopened, then that's not such a good picture. So the important thing here is combining metrics in the right way, in a meaningful way that paints a true picture of reality. So to just take that on a stage further, I'm a bit of a kind of, as I wouldn't call myself a petrol head, but I certainly do like looking at racing. And the analogy here is really presenting the metrics in the right way are really, really important. So on the one hand, you've got the driver who's on the track. He's the operator. He's the one who's actually going around the track. He needs to know things like his lap time. He needs to know things like is his brake balance right? And he can make adjustments, so, or she for that matter, as they're doing the drive, they can make adjustments to actually change what's happening there and then. Then back at the pit garage, you've got the tactical guys looking at these saying, right, okay, is the corner entry speed right? You know, how are they comparing with last lap? Could they brake a little bit later? This stuff is important because your driver's out there, he's pushing the car, he's trying to do the best laps. These guys can look at things like the tires. Are the tires in good condition? So I can be making great laps, but it's not going to take me to the end of the race. So from a tactical perspective, that information can be shared. So these are the operational metrics that affect the here and now. But on the right-hand side, then we have strategic metrics. These are not looked at while the race is actually going on. These are the metrics that get taken back to base, that the management team look at and say, look, how are we performing based on our trends? What changes can we make to push the trends in the right direction? I think it's really important that we understand that we've got operational, tactical, and strategic metrics, and understand that there is a hierarchy, and that hierarchy needs to be adhered to. We need the right metrics, encouraging the right behavior, presented in the right way. So from that perspective, Malcolm, hierarchy of metrics, explain your little pyramid to us here.
Very important little pyramid, Pat. Okay, it's something that I first wrote about in the late 1980s, and it was just something that to me made sense. First of all, if we look at the bottom of the pyramid, the data. So if we look at the data at the bottom of the pyramid, we have tons and tons and tons of data. We have huge amounts. For example, on the service desk, every call is measured and monitored, the time it took, how long it took to be answered. etc., etc. And then the incident is logged, who did it, when did it do, what priority was it, who was affected, why were they affected, and we do the same on changes. We know performance, we know availability times, we know response times, tons and tons of data. And as such, it's just a sea of nothing. It's just a sea of nothing. It's not until we start working on it, and the first level of we tend to work on is information. Information is where you take one asset, one aspect, such as, for example, abandoned calls. So I put in the value of abandoned calls for today, and I'll get some information back that will say, okay, we had 70 or 20 or whatever abandoned calls today. So now my data has become a little block of information. I've used my data to create a little block of information that tells me abandon rates. Now I might also say, how many priority ones? Can I get the data to organize for me how many priority ones today, how many priority twos today, how many priority threes today, etc., etc. And pretty soon I've got knowledge, because I can now look at the whole service desk and say, based on all the information collated from the data, I know whether the service desk did a good job today or not, or is doing a good job as we speak or not. With that knowledge, and being able to see not just the service desk, but incident management and problem management and change management and so on, I can make decisions that depend upon wisdom. The wisdom to make the right decision, to look at that and say, based on what I know here, I think we need to do X, Y, Z to do things better in the future. So wisdom is where we take all that information, all that data, those information chunks, put together into knowledge, and with groups of knowledge in front of me, I can apply wisdom. Because I need to have a point, a service focal point. That's what the SFP is. Service focal point. And that service focal point is immaculate service to the customer, potentially. It could be whatever you want. So really when we look at this, we've got data, tons and tons of it, information, knowledge, wisdom, and the focal point. If we go back to the slide we just saw a second ago, it still gives us the problem of where do we start. I mean, that's great. Okay, Malcolm, I like that. That's really, really good. But I can't do 116 and 348 and put that in front of people. It just can't be done. Maybe at some time in the future it can be, but right now that's just too difficult to do. So what we need to do initially is to reduce the juice just a little bit so that we can make sure that we can control it. So if we have a look at 6 key elements, we can see what I mean here. So I've just selected 6 key. Now the reason I've selected this 6 is actually quite simple. This 6 are done everywhere, wherever you go, whether people know they're doing them or not. There will be changes. There will be problems. There will be asset and configuration needs. There will be some kind of service desk or help desk or someone answering the phone or receiving emails. There will be some incidents will happen and will need to be fixed. Requests will always come into IT. If we look at those 6 things, I've taken them because they're one of the bases, if you like, to good. It's like in cooking, you know, whether it's French cooking, Italian cooking, Chinese, etc., all have their own basic ingredients which they start most dishes. And this is the basic ingredients with which we start the service management and IT management. Let's call it stew, shall we? And depending on how well we do on those, can tell us whether we have a good day or a bad day. If we look at the graphic, we can see that, for example, request fulfillment had 3 critical success factors and 12 KPIs. Incident management 6 and 18, and service desk has slightly different metrics because of the nature of what it does. The service asset has 3 and 16, as do problem management and change management. And so basically what we're talking about here is 3, 6, 9, 18 critical success factors. If we hit all of those targets and all those KPIs deliver those 18 critical success factors, then we could call that a good day. However, you could say out of 18 we have to hit at least 16 and it's still a good day. But 15 and below is a bad day. And that's something has to be done about it. The whole idea and the whole concept is we start the day with a good day, bad day approach. And we know for the last 24 hours, or as we speak, whether it's a good day or a bad day. And, you know, these need to be right for your organization. And Pat, I think you're going to tell us about that, aren't you?
Yeah, because I think, Malcolm, the ITIL, there's certainly the latest update. I mean, you must have been rather pleased to see what they've done with that. I know you mentioned at the end of the chapters you got your CSFs, your KPIs. But I think a lot of the time, you know, we substitute what is in the books for what's right. So, I mean, my point there is really it isn't an instruction manual. You can't really just rely on what ITIL tells you. You know, your customers may not care about some of the stuff that ITIL wants you to measure. So the other aspect, I think, is there's too much of an emphasis in terms of what we do on the lagging indicators. And what I mean by that is stuff that's happened after the fact. Number of incidents logged, service availability, service outages. It's all after the fact stuff that we measure, whereas I think we can do an awful lot more to reduce the number of incidents, to prevent recurrence of problems and known errors by basically going back to the leading indicators. So, for example's sake, if we improve the quality of known error information available to the service desk, then are we likely to kind of be able to reduce the number of recurring incidents and have a more effective problem management process? If, for example's sake, via self-service, we improve the knowledge base articles, can we actually help our users to actually resolve some of their own stuff? And also, can we push some of those low-value transactions, those simple things, the password resets, those type of things, or even provisioning for various different software applications. I want Visio, can I have it please? Yes, well, why not automate the process if you can? That just basically takes those low-value transactions away from the service desk and allows them to focus on the more high-value and the more contact-rich stuff. So I mentioned before that the IT metrics that we use probably are not going to be of any interest to our customers. Our customers generally don't want to know how many incidents we've logged. It's of no interest to them. So the important things is if we're reporting out to our business units and providing them with metrics, we have to reflect the reality of the situation. So I can report a good day and say I'm 99.9% availability and I've managed to hit that. But if my 0.1% happened at a critical time when availability was going to be really, or service outage was going to be really noticed, well then reporting success is of no benefit to me whatsoever. Are we providing the right information? And are we providing the right level of detail? So again, I want a simple indicator. If things are going well, I don't really want to drill into details. Perhaps I want to drill into details when they're not going so well. It does cause for me to have concern. The important part there is the review process. If your metrics are not driving your service improvement in your review process of the business, then you're probably not using the right business metrics. The other aspect is I often see metrics coming along, but without any kind of status update, without any commentary or opinion. So how useful would it be to have the incident manager saying, you know what, this month we had an increase in incidents, but this was because to a new application that we launched or whatever that may be. But just a bit of commentary and opinion, I think, really does help give us a perspective on things and give people more of an insight into what's going on. And also identifying which KPIs we need for that balanced approach and painting the right picture, the example there being first call resolution versus reopen rate, and possibly throwing in customer satisfaction for that as well. So making them right basically involves you considering all of these bits and pieces. In terms of performance and quality, Malcolm, I really like this slide. Talk us through this, please.
Yeah, before we do that, Pat, leave it up there though. Before we do that, there's a couple of things I wanted to chat over with you.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the problems we do in IT quite a lot, not just in service management, is to set failure targets as success targets and completely drive the wrong behavior. For example, we might say our target is to achieve 99.9% availability. And, you know, that's fine if you want to fail, because if you tell me I'm going to deliver 99.9, then that's what I'm going to aim my whole life at. And that doesn't work. I know you fly a lot, and could you imagine next time you went to an airport and went to get, to check in, and a new banner right across the check-in point says our target is 99.9% of our airplanes do not crash. Is there any chance you're getting on that plane?
Not a hope. Not a hope.
Not a hope in hell. And in fact, using that kind of statistics and applying it to Chicago O'Hare, so if 0.1% of all the planes taken off from Chicago O'Hare crashed, that would be 20-something thousand people killed per year.
Wow.
And it's as far as we're concerned, one is too many. Anything, but in this particular case, one is too many. And that's the problem. You know, you don't think that the people that are going, particularly Usain Bolt, is thinking of doing anything but run faster than he's ever run before and anybody else has ever run before. He's not setting his target at doing very well. He's setting his target at running faster than anybody's ever run before. And that's why he does run faster than anybody's ever run before, as he has that in his mind. And, so when we look at this, we have to remember that the stuff you said a moment ago, Pat, it's about two things. It's about performance and quality. And I apologize to everybody if this slide is a wee bit busy, but I really couldn't find a way of reducing it and really getting the point across. And you can see it's like a swing, a seesaw or something. You know, the balance at the bottom, the fulcrum right down there, customer satisfaction. On the left, we've got performance, which is what we tend to measure. How fast, how quick, how high, all that stuff. But what we don't often ask is the question about how well, how good, how beautiful was it. So speed to solve, this is great. The faster we can solve, the better it is. But you know, on first level incident solving, is it about solving as many as possible, as quick as possible, or should it be a bit more directed towards reduction, looking at them saying, we get 20 incidents per day from the same thing. If someone fixes that with a change or whatever, we can get rid of it. So speed to solve needs to be balanced against incident reduction so that we make sure we're going faster and faster. But the point is, if I'm getting awarded for speed to solve, I just don't want things to get worse. The more incidents, the more I solve, the better I look. I don't want it to get better. There's no driver there for me to get better. The next one down, incident escalation. How long did it take to escalate? That could be very fast. On the quality side, how often did we get it wrong is the key factor. Incident closure, the third box down. It's about how long did it take us to close the incident. And as Pat said earlier, it's also about how many did we have to reopen. That gives us our balance. Priority management. How quickly did we allocate priorities? Again, very important. But how often did we get the wrong priority? Again, very important, because that could be a disaster. To put a priority 1 down to priority 2 and take an hour to realize that this priority 2 is actually priority 1 could cause all sorts of problems. Incident answering. How quickly, the speed to answer. Against abandon rates, how often do people give up because we're taking too long to answer? When we look at these, and there's plenty more, and you can do this virtually with all the performance stats that you collect, you can ask that other question, how well are we doing it? It's not just how quickly, how many, it's how well do we do it. It's about balancing the two. And, you know, if we look at a metrics hierarchy, what we can see is, you know, we've got these KPIs and targets down the bottom here. Don't worry about the figures and stuff like that. All I'm trying to do is to give you an example. We've got targets, and you can see there's some 99s down there. As much as I dislike them, you have to put them in somewhere. And we come up to our target service focal point and our actual service focal point. So if we take all that stuff below, accumulate it all up, service management achieved, target was 99.75, and this month it achieved 99.75, or this day even better. And you know, okay, that's good, but it's just like who cares? It's just nothing to excite me there. It's just stuff. But you know, what about if we said, hey, let's just change this. Let's just replace all those numbers with a color. There we go. What about if I come in the morning, this is what my landing page in IT Service Management shows me. And that smiley face tells me that we hit our objectives for the last 24 hours, or however long. And I come in, I look at that, and then I can see the stats, and we can see that if we reflect them in green, we're still seeing a good picture. So Pat, can we move down? Thanks a lot. So here we can see the same stats in green, and you can see it has a different effect. As does, by the way, when we look at it from the other end. What about if it was a bad day yesterday? Oh, yeah. What about this landing page? Imagine the difference when you come in. If you're a manager or a supervisor, whatever, you come in, you go to your landing page, and you had that green smiley face. You think, oh, right, okay, I'll just settle down. I'll put my coffee down over here, and I'll just get myself organized. Hey, how you going? Hey, good to see you this morning. And we'll just relax and so on. What about if we see this face when we sit down? Oh, down goes the coffee quickly. What happened? What went wrong? Why did it go wrong? And then the figures will reflect them, say, in red, so we can really see what the whole game looks like. It looks really nasty. Nasty, nasty. But, you know, what about if we take those good day, bad days and express them over a given period, say a month, and have a look at how the stats pan out? Here we are. These are just imaginary. And you can see here that we've got June, you know, through to the beginning of August. And what happens here? Those red faces, they stick out really well. Say you've been on vacation for a couple of weeks, and it's in Europe, of course, for 3 weeks, but say you've been on vacation, you came back, and it was, let's say, July the 16th, and you get back and you look at the week before, and there were 2 bad days. What would your reaction be as supervisor or manager? You want to say, whoa, what happened on those days? What happened on the 10th and 11th? Now, we can see over a given period, you could say you can't have more than so many bad days per month or whatever. The whole idea is to take the basic figures that really matter, the basic stats that really matter, that incident, problem, change, and so on and so forth, feed them up to a service focal point, which could be customer satisfaction, exceptional service, whatever it might be, and then measure against it and report against it on a daily basis. And it's not really that difficult. But believe me, that landing page of a smiley face or an unhappy face really does get you moving first thing in the morning. I think the coffee does that for you, Pat, doesn't it?
A lot of the time, Malcolm, yeah. So, yeah, coffee will certainly get me going, but the metrics, so what should they and should they not do? So a lot of the stuff that I see, certainly in ITSM reporting, is the fact that we report on IT performance, but we ignore the service. We're offering lots and lots of information, so that's why I really like your good day, bad day concept, the smiley faces. But we don't really give the insights. That's why things like commentary, I think, are important. And we often produce the reports, but there's no real action taken. So we're just communicating activity, number of requests logged. I mean, what's that telling me? We put a lot of effort into producing, collating these reports. I'll actually come in a moment to show you why I think that is. But really, our metrics need to be a little bit simpler. So the first thing they should be doing is providing that foundation for service reviews. If they're not doing that, then, you know, why are we using them in the first place? The important part here is demonstrating value to the customer, but also linking, and I rarely find this. I don't know if that's your experience, Malcolm, but things like we report across IT and the service desk, but we really don't have any tie-in with the other groups. So if development, for example, say we're responsible for some of the aspects of problem management, then we need an operating level agreement with them to ensure that we can hit a SLA with the customer. The other part is underpinning contracts and third parties. So are our third parties performing in the way that we expect them to? Can we meet our service level obligations based on the agreements that we've got with our suppliers? We have to demonstrate that we're continually trying to do this service improvement thing. And in order to do that, we really need to be looking at the recipients, the stakeholders, and reflecting their interests and saying what they need to hear. And also the aspect of being available when needed. I often see that organizations saying, oh, this manager has asked for this type of report for a meeting, but you know, it takes them days and take an awful lot of effort to collate the information because they may not be capturing the data, they may have to pull it from various different systems. But to me, the issue really is this. The common issue is that what we have is we've got these risk logs, Excel reports, Word documents, meeting requests, supplier reviews, all of these things which are coming from different locations, totally disconnected, hand crank, manual intervention, face-to-face updates, asking Joe if he knows what's going on here, whatever it may be. But they're all disconnected, and then what we've got at the top level there is the stuff that we present to our boards, for service reviews, to our executives to say how well we're performing. And to me, that's not sustainable. You cannot drive service improvement if you're having to hand crank all these things all the time. So how do we get around this? So the first thing is using the tools you have available. So I come back to my racing analogy. And for me, your service desk tool really is your operational or your tactical tool. That's the piece, basically, you're looking at the various different reports you've got coming out of the system. Here's a really simple one. It's just basically number of open calls, group by analyst, and by status. So looking at those, I can see, you know, we've got a lot of escalated calls to the owner. And that's a handy report for me to have, but again, I shouldn't have to kind of go in and manually hand crank this stuff. Most of the tools now offer a facility whereby you can say, I want to schedule this. I want it to happen, run it once a day, start it on a particular day, on particular days, and then once it's ready, just send itself out to the following recipients. That's a useful way to kind of spend less time collating these things, and most of the tools are available for doing this right now. So aside from the operational aspects, you need to be connecting the dots and managing that supply chain. So here we have, you know, the service level agreement engine, if you like, and that includes all the stuff you're going to need in terms of your standard costs, when it's valid from and until, when it needs to be reviewed, next, who owns it from an IT perspective, from a business perspective. This is all fairly standard stuff. Then our description, our priority matrix, our review periods, the references we've got, again, all connecting right to the top here where we've got our OLAs for this service level agreement, the configuration items and services and the customers it covers, number of active requests. This is all pretty standard stuff and all available within modern service management tools. From that operational perspective, we're back here to our driver and our pit garage. So, what do we need to do? So in advance of that service, the response time or the fixed time for your SLAs being provided, you've got here your time zones, the response to fixed times. Then you have some triggers that are saying, look, in advance, before this gets to an expiry response time, do something. So just inform someone. So in this case, we're not escalating the call, we're just providing a different color arrow, and we're sending a notification or an email to somebody. But again, this is provoking action at the time when and where it's needed. And this is the operational and the tactical stuff that I was talking about. We then move on to kind of the more comprehensive review of our metrics. So this basically is a dashboard. It's currently within the Supportworks tool. It's the ExecView scorecards. And what you've got here is a really detailed set of information, several sets of information around things like incident volumes and performance summary, customer satisfaction, risks, and all of that good stuff. So how we use this is basically taking Malcolm's pyramid, and where data becomes information, becomes knowledge, wisdom, and action. All of that stuff drives improvement. So the scorecards, in this particular case, ExecView is just basically a cloud-based solution. It takes all this performance data from your service management solution and populates it. And then there's governance and excellence lifecycle models that actually it works to show you how these metrics affect your business. It includes some of the suggested KPIs from ITIL 2011. The scorecards then can be made relevant to each team that's looking at this, to each manager that's looking at this. And what we do is we use the concepts of Malcolm's good day, bad day, but we provide a little bit more depth around this. So I'll show you that in a moment. So for me, I want to look at that simple traffic light symbol. If everything's green, I don't care. I'm not particularly interested. I may want to look at how we could make things even better or raise their service levels. But in essence, if everything's green, I'm quite happy. It's when things start turning yellow and start turning red, that's when I want to drill into the detail, and that's useful for executives. So the way that this works is really there's a governance tree which takes all your individual processes, and then what it does, it rolls that up into a collated service delivery management scorecard and a service desk scorecard, and that information is rolled up further for the executive views. So your CIO's summary and his more detailed scorecard. And then if you have the capability, if you're managing that, you can actually provide the executives with project and portfolio management as well. So you're tying in ITSM with your project portfolio and projects office, and you're giving an overall view at an executive level of how we're performing across the entire IT estate. So let me just show you how it works. It's very, very simple indeed. So here's your service delivery management scorecard. And here's that status summary thing I was talking about earlier. This is where your service delivery manager will go in and say, hey, we've done well this month, or we haven't done so well, and here are the reasons why. What it then breaks down within the report are the various incident volumes, in this case, by service. And you'll see some kind of little arrows, so the yellow arrows and the green arrows, and you'll see they're facing in different directions. So if it's facing kind of horizontally, then that means basically things are staying the same. Things are moving up or things are moving down. If it's yellow, then I need to be interested that something's happening that may require action. What that equates to, if I look at performance summary here, we've got the various different measures. So you've got incident management has got 27 measures which are green and 3 measures which are yellow. Request management, again, has got 1 measurement which is red. And that tells me, good, if things are green, great, I'm not worried. If they're yellow, it means actually I can probably live with it, but I may need further attention. If it's red, then I want to know why we're failing in that area. So by just clicking into that kind of traffic light symbol, if you like, just basically takes me down to a level of detail where actually I'm looking at all of those 30 measures all rolled up. So here we've got the 30 measures, and you'll see there's a red box here which has got a trend, which is showing me how that trend is performing. So if I drill into the trend just by clicking it, what then happens is it shows me performance of those metrics over time. So if I look back to February 2011, I was hitting 68.5%. Not good enough. That means it's red. Through July, through to November, we were hitting yellows. So tolerable but not ideal. And lately we've been doing a little bit better, so everything's green. And again, you've got the flexibility to actually manage and change all of this. So if I click in this area that says SLA less than or greater than or equal to 80%, what actually happens is you get the measurement up that says, if it's at least a particular measure, I'll allow a tolerance of this. And then what that means is essentially, if I change this to 70%, anything above 70% will be in green. Anything between 60 and 70% will be in yellow, and anything below that will be in red. So again, here we just drop the service level, and you'll see the effect that that has on my performance over time. So useful information that allows me to drill into the detail when I need it and where I need it. You then cover the rest of the commonly adopted ITSM processes. So here we've got a performance management scorecard for problem management and also for change management. And again, status summary, the change volumes, the risks, the latest changes, all of this is rolled up. So a nice, simple summary within one scorecard gives me all of that level of detail. Right, okay, so moving on from there, the executive decision-making support. This is probably your CIO. They're looking at this and they're basically saying, look, what's my performance by process? What's my service level summary? What programs are we running? What are our critical milestones, our critical SLAs? Again, I just want this level of detail. If everything's okay, I don't need to drill any further. If it's not okay, I may want to drill down into it. And again, if you're looking at the ITSM scorecards, you do have the optional addition of portfolio and project management. So that allows me to say, here are the critical programs we're running across IT. Here are my issues, risks, and actions. And other people completing their details and just doing their job through the service management solution. All of this gets populated, and your CIO gets a level of visibility that's going to be incredibly important for making those executive decisions. So really, I want to just finish on some top tips, because we're actually going to give you guys an option. You'll see there's a control panel on your right-hand side, and there's a question icon. You can raise questions via that. So start to think about your questions. But my top tips for this will be, the tools are great. You know, I've shown you some really good tools and what you could do with them, but they're not going to define what's right for you. Great tools will help, no question, but you still have to do the legwork. So whatever best practice approach or framework you happen to be using, there is generally a mantra that says adopt, adapt, improve. Adopt the framework, adapt it to fit your requirements, and improve your performance. When I say adapt to meet your business, I'll cover those questions again. Why? Why do we need the metric? Who are we providing the metric for? What are they going to use it for? How easy it is to collect it? And which decisions is it going to support? What's it telling me, not telling me? We need to continually review performance against those metrics and use our trend analysis to find out where things are going, why they're going in that direction. But I would say the two most important points there is, if you're going to focus on things, focus on the stuff that's highly visible, that matters most to your customers. We're trying to prove value. Those are the areas we need to be focusing on. And where we're successful, trying to tie them into business objectives. I mean, that's the panacea. That's nirvana. To be able to say, because of our service request performance this month, 15 trucks have left the store on time, better than they did the previous month. That's our panacea. That's our ultimate aim, is to get to that level of reporting. But that's a decent starting point, and your ITSM scorecards will give you some visibility as to how you're performing and what the trends are over time. So I want to just basically cover some of the service level objectives. So here's an example of SAP service level objectives. And what we have is not just the IT metrics. We've got some technical metrics which says we're targeting 100% availability. So there you go, Malcolm, you'll be pleased. I'm looking at 100%. Our benchmark is 4 nines. And what that tells me straight away is that we have to ensure less than 9 minutes of downtime per month. And if we fail to do that, the business can't process financial transactions. From the business perspective, they're looking to generate around 7,500 invoices a month. Their benchmark is 5,000. And actually, if they can't do that, then the working capital of the business is affected. Our customer satisfaction metrics say, I'm trying to achieve, actually that's bad because I'm trying to achieve a 9. I'm not sure why I'm achieving a 9 and not a 10. And also just some support options, just letting the business know, look, the standard is 12/5 support, and here's our target response and our benchmark times for that. But there is 24/7 support. It's likely to cost the business more to do that, and they'll have to resource and fund IT to provide that level of service. But if it's important enough, then the business will provide that resource and that funding. Okay, so Malcolm, your top tips.
Hey, Pat. That was fascinating. I'm glad to see the 100% target was in there. I just I just want to stress to everybody, I realize we can't always hit 100%. In some cases it may be almost impossible. So of course you can set a slightly lower target, but if you do that, make sure that people don't get comfortable hitting that failure target. Because really 100% is failure and everything else is a degree of, 100% is success, everything else is a degree of failure. But you know, it's complacency that's the danger there, I think. Make sure you understand your hierarchy, your metrics hierarchy. Particularly make sure that you know the structure of data and so on, as we just heard from Pat, and you saw my pyramid earlier. So understand the metric hierarchy, and again, it's fairly obvious that report that what needs reporting. You don't have to report everything. You don't have to put everything out for grabs. Just put out what needs to be seen, and make sure you've got the backup data and the backup information and knowledge and so on if you require it. And when it comes to managing data, data means different things to different people. You know, what makes a manager happy is not necessarily what makes an agent happy or an employee happy. They can still both be happy, but it is not necessarily the same thing. So make sure that each level understand their roles and producing and managing the data and understanding and interpreting. Number 4, metrics should measure success, not endorse failure. That to me would be the motto for this whole workshop. To me, metrics should measure success, but not in such a way that they make failure look like success. If you don't know, if you're not sure, collect data. Because remember, data is just that big sea at the bottom. What we want to make sure is if we do need something, it's swimming somewhere in that sea, and we can go find that fish and bring it out. So if in doubt, collect the data. Metrics will evolve as trends, and I'll give you a simple example here. My 2 eldest granddaughters go to the local high school, just a regular high school, not a fee-paying school, just a regular high school. The reason I'm saying that is that last September, every single child, that's 1,200 children, were all given an iPad. Not as a present, but as a school tool to use in the school. And of course, the youngest one, it was her very first day at high school. She got given an iPad. It can only go down from there, can't it? But why is that important? And I'm sure you've got your own opinions on that. But the thing that's interesting is if you talk to the people that run the IT department in the school, it was actually quite a nice little job before, because they got 50 or 60 screens or something in the laboratory. The children would go in there and learn to use them, learn to build spreadsheets and whatever else they needed to do, and put their homework in and so on and so forth. It's quite a nice, easy job. Now they've got to look after 1,200 iPads in the hands of teenagers. I'll just let you sit and think about that for a minute. In the hands of teenagers. You can bet your life some of these teenagers will be taking them apart, be doing all sorts of things with them. They're going to disappear, they're going to get dropped, they're going to get broken, they're going to get stuff spilled over them. They're even two kids actually got in a fight, and one of them was trying to hit the other one with the iPad, if you can imagine. Metrics evolved. The metrics that drove that IT department last year are entirely different to the ones that drive them today because of that change. New technologies that come in, make sure they collect exactly what you need so you can use it when you need it. Everybody knowing their roles. Don't set targets that drive the wrong behavior. And if you do set targets that drive the wrong behavior, fine, correct it. And you can correct that by conversation and by presentations, but correct it. Make sure that people are not just trying to hit figures like we saw with Dilbert just now. And make sure you understand the nature of the recipient. You know, as an ex-senior manager, I can tell you, I really shouldn't be saying this, but I can tell you I was very lazy. As far as metrics are concerned, if it wasn't on one page, I wasn't interested. Don't start bringing me 20, 30 pages of brilliant data, which might be brilliant to a manager, it might be brilliant to a supervisor, but it isn't good for me. All I want to know is how well are they doing down there, and probably there's a flavour of the day I want to see as well, because if something's been going wrong or a new system's just gone live or something like that, and so I might say, hey, I want to know more about this for the next month or two. Make sure you understand the nature of the recipient. That way you can provide the data and the information and the knowledge and the wisdom that that recipient wants, so he can take the right actions. So, Pat, can we...
Right, Malcolm. So,
okay,
we're near the end of this, are we? Okay.
We are very near the end of this. I'd like to say one thing, if I can. I've spent a huge amount of time over the last 20 years in Colorado Springs, and I would just like to say to anybody listening in from Colorado Springs right now that you have every sympathy for me, and I'm thinking about you, and I just hope you haven't been hit or hurt by this terrible, terrible fire. That was it,
Absolutely. Pat. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. We have got a few questions coming in already, so as I'm talking, if you've got any more, please send them our way, and we'll address them as quick as we can. We've got a few minutes to do that. So if you haven't already done so, there is a bit.ly link at the top where you can download the white paper. Malcolm, you're doing a US tour, a HDI tour. So there's a link at the bottom of the thinkhdi.com website, so
yeah,
go
absolutely.
there. Yeah, and you're covering this in a lot more detail, correct?
Yeah, it's basically what we're seeing now in much, much more detail. And what we'll be doing is traveling around from city to city, doing it's a full day. Well, I'll say full day. I'm not good at full days, as you well know. Basically, it's 8 till 3, and I'll be in Philadelphia, Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Charlotte, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, and also in Canada, in Toronto, from the 17th to the 28th of September.
17th to the 28th of September. So is that free to HDI members? Is it a chargeable event?
It's free to HDI members, yes. Non-members, I think, is $65, which is still a hell of a bargain.
Still a very good bargain. Well, listen, let's try and deal with some of the questions here. So I'm not sure if I'm, is it Jean Robinson who sent us an observation. She said that on the good day, bad day slide, we've got 8 days in the week, which I sent Jean a reply and said, look, I work in IT and I felt like I've worked 8 days a week for my entire life. So I don't know if anyone's the same, but thank you very much for that observation. Okay, so we've got, who is it? Richard. Richard's just asking, I'm in the process of implementing a set of KPI metrics for a reasonable sized IT service. Are there a set of KPI metrics that are best ones to start collecting? Most metrics I see are useful, but collecting reporting could be an industry in its own right. How right you are in that respect. Malcolm, I'll hand that over to you. I know I've got a few questions myself, or a few ideas myself.
We did have the graphic earlier of the 6 basic starting points, you know, of instant problem, change, request, and service desk, asset, and so on and so forth. And I think that's, was it Richard, was it?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start, Richard. As far as I'm concerned, we can't do the whole lot at once. It's a case of folding things in. You know, it's kind of like a souffle. You have to gently fold in the mix as you go along. You put it all in, all the bubbles disappear, and you don't get a souffle. It's the same thing. If you try and put too much in too fast, then you're going to find that you're not going to be measuring the right things in the right place. So from my point of view, I think it's a case of looking and saying, okay, let's look at those points of pain, which is obviously getting things fixed and stopping things going wrong and good changes. I mean, you might be aware, for example, that over the last, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, we had a large bank in Europe and UK that had a big failure. And that was, how long that last, Pat? That was 8 or 9 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was, yeah. So the whole of RBS, actually I'm a customer. I got hit by it. We also had a failure on the O2 on the mobile service. So we've had our fair share of failures here over the last little while, Malcolm.
But interestingly, Richard, the one for RBS, the bank, and it was huge, or a huge bank, was actually a failed change. And as simple as that. Now, you know, whether that could have been stopped or whether it could have been prevented, I don't know. But certainly, if someone was continually looking at change management every time a change went in and say, did it generate any incidents? If it did, how can we stop it happening again so that it doesn't generate incidents on that type of change? Maybe this could have been avoided. But certainly for sure, change management was the guilty party. That's why I put it in that little bundle of 6 at the bottom earlier.
Yeah, I'd agree, Malcolm, but I still come back to that piece of advice I gave earlier. The ITIL stuff is good. There's some really basic, some standard, rudimentary, and fairly basic metrics that you can collect that will actually give you a good handle on what's happening. But things like mean time to resolve and stuff like that, it's all good for the IT folk, and we need to understand that. We need to understand it for improving. But my first piece of advice, I mean, Richard says here he's about to, for a reasonable sized IT service. So I'm not sure if he means a single service or an IT service organization. But what I would say to you is immediately identify the service owners within the business, talk to those guys straight away. Identify who owns the service within IT, talk to those guys straight away, and find out what are the bare minimum metrics you should be reporting, because we'll waste an awful lot of time measuring stuff, reporting on stuff, if in fact it's not serving the purpose. So why do you want the measurement? What are we measuring? Why do we want that measurement? That's,
Pat,
that to me, key advice.
Pat, I mentioned earlier, Pat, about baseball and the huge number of statistics that everybody looked at. But what's the one that matters?
Yeah, who won?
Did we win? Exactly. I mean, there's millions of stats, but it all gets down to did we win. Depending on whether we won or lost, those stats will be interpreted entirely differently.
Indeed, indeed. Or are we winning? I think it's probably, if you're uncertain, a service management situation is probably, are we winning? You know, that's a nice thing to be able to know. So that'd be my advice to you. Certainly take a look at those KPIs. There's tons of good metrics available. I often Google for specific metrics, and I've got lots and lots of decent advice back. But what I would say, and I say this all the time, IT service managers, service delivery managers, process owners, etc., circulating all these metrics, and if nobody's calling you to say, look, I want to discuss what this means, I want to discuss what actions we can take, how can we improve it, is it costing too much, whatever that would be. They're not calling you up to have those discussions. Chances are the metrics are not being used, and you're probably wasting your time collecting them. So make sure, whatever it is, that you talk to the service owners, IT service owners, business service owners, and understand what information they want. Then you can always drill down on the more level of details from managing IT performance across those, and the ITIL stuff gives you a decent starting point. We got a final comment actually from Peter Hope, just basically saying, thanks for your concerns, Malcolm. Spring folks are recovering well. So that's a nice positive note to end our session on.
Fantastic.
So we've gone past the top of the hour, guys. Thank you very much for your attendance. The recording of this presentation and the actual the slides themselves will be made available. So if you're looking for that, then we should be sending you a link in the next little while. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Really appreciate your input. And thank you very much, folks, and tune in again when we got something decent for you. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.